Hi,
Isaac.
it's Yaya of BSB. I am coming today with you, the special guest, or to you with the special guest, our sister reader, Drea. Say hey, Drea. I'm hoping that your audio, we can hear you. Say hey, Drea.
Hey.
There we go. We can hear you now. We are bringing you kind of sporadic. It is kind of sporadic, but it is intentional. Drea recommended this book to me when we were in Atlanta after Indie Love. She got to see S.A. Cosby at the local Barnes and Noble. And so me not even knowing who this specific author was, I was intrigued. I was like, well, recommend something to me. And she did. Oh my God. I hope y'all can see this. Razor blade tears. Can y'all see that? Yeah, you can see that now. Razor blade tears. This book was absolutely amazing. Amazing. So let me just give you a little bit if you've not read it yet, just a little bit, just a little bit. And honestly, I can tell you that there will be spoilers. So if you're here and you don't want spoilers, this is your time to leave. This is your cue because this will be spoilers. This is us giving a book review, but we're actually going to be doing the discussion questions from the book, right? But this book is about these two young men, black and white, that marry and they're now murdered, and their fathers are meeting for the first time at a funeral. Dre, I'm gonna let you pick up from here because your way of telling it didn't give a lot away and it had me intrigued. So go ahead and finish where I left off.
So what do you do when, as a father?
Louder.
So what do you do as a father, and you have and you have a son that you love, but his lifestyle is not anything that you can connect with or you feel upset about. So these two men go through life with their sons, and the sons happen, and they don't like their son's sexuality, and 6 degrees of separation. So these two men's sons live in the same town, and they sons meet and they get married and they have a child. Those two sons end up becoming murdered, and the quest goes on because now these two men realize after their sons are murdered that whatever their sexuality was, it really didn't matter. So now the quest becomes who killed our sons and what should we do about it. And as they take this journey, they realize that all this animosity and all this stuff about their sons that they had really didn't matter because the love that they had for their sons outshone all of that. So you get these two men that's trying to get one white man and one black man from different sides of the track trying to navigate this little world of who killed my child.
And Dre, you put that so well because at the end of the day, at this point, what would have mattered is not whether or not they were gay, but whether or not they were alive,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, this was a really, really, really good story. Murder mystery, suspense. Um, of course, you like if you ever seen Criminal Minds, right? You got some of the story up front. It gave you basically what the situation is, but how do we figure out how did we get to this point, right?
That's right.
Um, and that's what I read. It was y'all. It was so freaking good. About 500 pages. So it is definitely a novel. He wrote it so well. He wrote this book where I felt like I was really watching a movie, watching a show, watching a series. And every time I did the audio as well. So well, that reminds me, the audio was being done by, let me see, I have
Alpha
it.
or white.
Yes. Yeah, girl, I gotta show y'all the picture, right? Adam Lazor White. Can y'all let's see. Can y'all see that?
I think he played on a soap opera. Was it Young and the Restless or the Guiding Light at one time?
Yeah. So he is a true actor. And so my girlfriend, they heard his voice and she goes, oh, I like that voice. He reminds me, his face when I first saw it reminded me of Philip Michael Thomas. Remember I
Yeah.
shared that with you? And so it was really, really good to hear him perform it so well. he had basically had to play every character that had a speaking part, right? So you know how challenging that can be. You were never confused. Buddy Lee has this country voice, and Ike had this rough. And let's keep in mind, Buddy Lee is a white man.
Yeah,
Ike is a black man. They're both ex-convicts.
yeah,
So there's just a lot that unfolds in this story to make you know. And again, we won't tell you the basis of all of it, but there are some spoilers.
right.
So because we want you to enjoy it. So we're gonna start with the first discussion question. And it goes off by saying specifically in chapter 4, Ike retreats to his shed to use this heavy bag. So he's like, punching on the bag or whatever. But it's here he finally allows himself to cry. And the question that's being asked is, how much of Ike's intense grief do you think is based on the loss of his son? And how much do you think is based on his guilt at his own intolerance with regards to his son's homosexuality? My response to that is I think it's 100. Dre and I actually had a chat about this. First off, as a parent, we know the reality is hurt is hurt, loss is loss. That grief is always, again, if there is a bond, if there is a relationship, and if there is true love there, right? The grief is going to outweigh everything. But you take the grief and the guilt of how you may have made him feel when he's probably was really looking for your approval or your acceptance. Just you still your love, right? As his father. How about you, Dre?
I think men in general sometimes they don't know how to really accept, or they don't think they have anything in common with their child if they happen to be of a different sexuality. So you have Ike that's been in jail all this time, and he comes home and now his son is gay. So there is this disconnect between that because you have to come home first of all and try to reconnect with your child from jail, and on top of that he's gay, so you're not sure about how to connect with him. So in I think in Ike's mind, he's like, I don't know what to do for my son or how to treat my son because that's not a reality for me.
Right.
But when his son is killed, I think he realizes it didn't matter at all. So I think, like you said, it's 100. I think he loved his son regardless of his sexuality, but he was not able to what's a good word for that? He was not able to allow himself to say, "That's my son. I love him regardless." I mean, let me try to find a way to bond with him. There's no bonding between those two at that point in time
Yeah.
because I didn't know how to handle that. I think
Right.
it was all about him, and him being gay was not about Ike.
Exactly. Exactly. I like that you put it like that too. I'd like to piggyback on that for just a second and say I never felt like there was never love present. I
Yeah,
feel like it was more so Isaiah not feeling it.
yeah,
Because his love was ever so present. I mean, he was still involved in Isaiah's life, but he not the parts of Isaiah that involved Derek.
yeah. Because Isaiah would still come by the house. They would still have barbecues, but they would have a fight or they would have a harsh discussion about his life at those fights. So he, his
Exactly.
son, he just wasn't accepting of his sexuality.
Exactly.
I think that
Exactly.
was the hard line for Ike. And then once he passed, he realized that sexuality didn't matter anymore.
Exactly. This is one of those perfect book discussions that you literally could grab some, some wine, your crackers, your cheese, your charcuterie board.
Or
Yes, and you going in because this can go so far when you think about so many factors here that played in that. But again, we're talking about a manly man,
yeah,
right? A man that came from the streets, man, a black man. But what we find out is the commonality.
Yes.
You found out the commonality because it was no different for Buddy Lee.
Nope.
And for him, it was another element. It was not only was he in love with a man, but he was in love with a black man.
Because Buddy Lee also was racist. So he grew up with the racist family. So it was a double whammy. You know, it was a double whammy for him.
Double whammy.
And then with Buddy Lee, his 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 so ever present comedy and and his shit talking, he always gave his son something, a smart comment each time he talked to him to make that conversation end, or make Derek feel less than. So that just added on to Derek's breakup from him, or the distance between them two. You know,
Exactly. And Derek got the short end of the stick as well too. So, because he wasn't getting it from his dad or his mom. How about that?
that.
So the second question is a little different. It talks about a scene that comes in well after we've gotten acquainted. And by acquainted, I mean just awareness that they exist, right?
Yep.
That there, Ike and Buddy Lee exist. And the question is, the funeral home actually calls the dads, called Ike, and let them know that their son's grave sites, their tombstones, their headstones have been vandalized. So the question is, the vandalism of their son's gravestone provides the catalyst for Ike and Buddy Lee to begin their investigation. What do you think the destruction of the gravestone symbolizes for both Ike and Buddy Lee? And how does the way each of them sees this action determine their decisions going forward? Without spoiling it again, in all fairness, once you read it, we, I think we were in agreement that this question was not phased fairly because the whole point of the discussion questions is because we've read the book, right? But in this case, I'm going to assume you haven't. So if you're choosing to listen and you haven't entirely listened, I felt like that question should have been asked a different way. And the response that I'm going to give to it is, it's significant because it's as if to say their death wasn't enough.
Yep.
Now their memory, now the place that marks their existence, right? Their final resting place has even been destroyed and vandalized. And it really screamed hatred.
Yeah, and also too, my sons are now dead. So how dare you? So they're dead, and then you still have the audacity, because they're dead, to have this hatred toward them in their death.
In
So
their death.
so if they're dead, why is it so important for you to still have all this hatred, and then have the nerve to do this to their final resting place?
The audacity. That's the word. Audacity. It was really free 99. Question 3 says, Buddy Lee and Ike are both ex-cons and are both fathers of gay sons who didn't have a positive relationship with their children. As they seek vengeance for their sons, they also encounter individuals who challenge their ideas and beliefs. Do you think either or both of them changed substantially over the course of the book? And I will say absolutely. Absolutely. How can you not experience such trauma and then encounter so many different people throughout this act of revenge that you're seeking, but then to see these people in a different light, probably even regretful that you didn't give your sons an opportunity to really be themselves with you. So other people got to view your sons in a manner in which you never got to know him because that's not the side.
Also sad that during this process as well, they, even Ike and, oh, I know, oh, you're Derek's dad. Oh, Derek said you didn't have anything to do with him. So during this process, they see they've met their friends. Their friends are great people. Their friends love them, right? and they love the daughter, Ariana. But they're the talking about their dads to their friends made the dads feel like it was like I didn't love them. I just couldn't understand. So the dads felt bad about that. So during this whole process, when they start to see their life unfold before them and how they live their life, I think that a lot of that changed their view of them, even though they were gay. You know,
Absolutely. I
because they
really,
were individuals and people, and not just as gay men.
exactly. They saw them as individuals, just, and there were moments where we heard where things were stated from some of these these people, where it's like, it's just like being black, and I had to let them know, no, that's not the same. It's
But yeah,
not the same thing. It's not the same. It is not the same. I cannot escape. You can go into the workforce and hide your sexuality. I can't hide my blackness,
yeah,
you know. So they we were trying to help them to understand what I feel is valid. And I think it can't be dismissed, but sometimes things are taught to us, in this light.
yeah. It was a double-sided coin. I think he was trying to tell us with that, because he was trying to say that is because the guy was like that is correct, but I also shouldn't be able to hide because I'm gay, right?
I
So
shouldn't have to.
I was also saying that is a true statement, but your being gay can be hidden. My blackness cannot.
Cannot.
Walk
It
into a
cannot.
room, people don't know that you're gay until you tell them.
Can't
They
take the skin
like
off.
automatically.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This next question is one of those questions you have to get to know Buddy Lee. Buddy Lee, he is a hoot. And so the question asks, Buddy Lee often uses humor in his conversations. Do you think this is a defense or coping mechanism? And if so, is it healthy? Defense, no, I think it's just organically who he is. Now, sometimes he's used it as a distraction to accomplish what he needed to get done, or basically to delay things so that there was time made. But a defense, no. Coping, I just think it was organically who he is. And is it healthy? I think being who you truly are authentically is very healthy. I think there's no other way to be than to be you. And if being goofy, being silly, being, if that's you, there's nothing wrong with that.
But his humor came not at the expense of others. It just came.
Exactly.
Oh, he wasn't really talking about others in his humor. It'll just be something that you're having a conversation, and the humor just spills out.
And it gets his point across. Like, there was that one of my funniest moments is when he tells I hear him clanking.
And what?
And Ike goes, like, what? He's like, your balls, you got balls of brass.
Yep.
And to think of how clever that is, because even in that moment, Ike had to laugh. So sometimes it can be very comforting to talk to somebody that, can find more humor, even in tragedy.
But I think with that too, with those two going through that, I think that humor also lessened a lot of the sternness in the room. You know what I mean? Because it was such a heavy, heavy book about them trying to find who killed their son.
Yes,
But broke that up a little bit.
exactly.
It gave a little bit of relaxation. So when they come out of a situation, but at least had something smart to say, I can laugh and get some of that heaviness off of him during that time frame.
Yes, yes. And I appreciated that, because that, for me, I don't give a damn how good the book is, how sexy the book is. I love a little humor in it. I love to crack up every once in a while, because I don't like anything that's just gonna have me straight emotional or straight serious all the time. So that really gives it a lot of balance.
Off balance. Yeah.
The next question is, Ike and Buddy Lee don't get along at the beginning of the book, but over time their relationship grows and becomes a friendship. One of the things they disagree on is race and how it affects both of their lives. In those conversations, who learned the most, Ike or Buddy Lee? or did they both educate each other equally? Without a doubt, they definitely educate each other equally.
Yeah. So
I think as a whole, we as Black people make assumptions about white people and put them all in a box. And the same for white people when it comes to us.
yeah, because the two of them, Ike had to learn that Buddy Lee life wasn't as easy as he thought it was. Because sometimes we think you're white, you're right, that life could be an easy process, right? And Buddy Lee had to understand that through Ike, that every step he made had to be strategic, and it was harder for him because he was black, right? A good
Hmm.
idea of that was when we find out that Buddy Lee went to jail for 5 years for having a carload of meth, right? Ike was saying if that was me, it would have been 20 years.
Exactly.
So, and so Buddy Lee was like, you were thinking it had been that long? Ike was like, yes. It would have
Absolutely.
been 5 years from that. If for me, it would have been 20 to 25 years from that. So those are the disparities that they learned from each other.
Exactly. You used that word before, and I recall having that aha light bulb moment because that's exactly what it was, disparities and understanding the injustice in the system and
Hmm.
how it is used to hurt us more. There is no equality. So as far as educating, they were educating each other and knowing and educating each other in the difference. To be honest with you, it also just made you know and understand every individual. We talked about this too, that it's different strokes for different folks. You're not going to experience the same thing that, your sister did, your brother did, or your cousin did. You may have had some of the same opportunities made available to you, but our experiences will be different down the line. So you'll see your cousins living different lives and so forth because everybody's made different decisions and have different experiences. So you can't lump everybody up in the same box.
I think we discussed about you could be raised in the same house. You could in the same house with the same parents, got the same rearing, but you will see things differently from your point of view, right?
Right.
So it doesn't really matter. People keep saying, but people will tell you all the time, well, y'all are sisters, y'all were raised the same, but everybody has a different experience with their parents. Everybody
Exactly.
has a different experience with their sisters. And we can't lump everybody in the same category because you're not understanding what their point of view from that is.
Exactly. That's a great point too. And I certainly appreciated that in reading this too. It definitely opens your mind and your views on things. The next question, I actually skipped over one, but this next one I've talked about. Violence is a major component of the narrative in Razorblade Tears. Both Ike and Buddy Lee are adept at taking and dispensing violence. Is the violence that Ike and Buddy Lee engage in a substitute for or an alternative form of communication for these men who admittedly have poor coping skills? My response to that is, first off, every bit of violence that was,
Oh, for
it was definitely warranted. It definitely was necessary because let's just be real. Their goal was to achieve something that even the police couldn't do.
oh,
And
wasn't trying to do. Remember, that
exactly,
there wasn't even they had stopped the investigation for their son's death. Remember, it was a cold case.
it was a cold case because they said no one was talking to them. So it's like, oh, really? And again, let's go back to that question about the headstones to incite some rage within them to provoke them to want to get to business, mean business, and handle business. That involved some sense of that. You had to show up with your big boy drawers on, ready to throw blows if necessary.
Yep.
Because again, we talking ex-convicts. I done been in the streets. I done been in jail. He didn't had to do things that he's regretful about. But behind his son, he ain't got no problem doing it
So we
again.
can say this because it really won't be a spoiler. I nickname was Riot.
Riots.
That should tell you a whole lot right there about what he's capable of doing. Right? His nickname was
A whole
Riot.
nother personality. And when I tell you, when he gotta show up, he coming.
Coming, coming.
So is it like coping skills? Listen, it everything was warranted. The
Yeah,
next question, you wanted to say something, Drea?
yeah. So each piece of violence in this was not like they went out looking for the violence. They didn't go. They walked into the room trying to talk to people, right?
Absolutely.
They didn't. And if the violence was added toward them, then they gave it back. But remember, in this book too, when he finally told his wife Maya that he was going to what he was going to do, her only thing was just make sure whatever you do, you come home. So
Exactly.
she gave him permission to do
Right.
what he do, right? All she
Implied.
have to do because she was like, I need to know, you know, I only get up because of my granddaughter. My son is going. If you're going to try to figure out who killed my son, do what you have to do. Just come home.
Just come home. Just come home. Um, yeah, that's some great points right there. Just come home. It was implied permission. She never said outright go and do it, but she had no objection to
Yes.
it. Because at this point, do something. Shit, you ain't do nothing when he was alive. And that's how she really felt.
Hey,
That's how she really felt.
Maya didn't have a soft voice. She said exactly what she felt when he was here. You didn't care. Now you want to do something for him? Good. If you want to do it, I need for you to still come home.
Yep. This next question says, do you think that Ike and Buddy Lee did the correct thing by taking the investigation into their own hands? I believe that they did the right thing that they felt they needed to do. And the reason I feel like that is because to experience trauma and to know that there was something you could have done and you did nothing, the regret, the grief is beyond just not knowing or that you lost, but it's a combination of not knowing and then guilt because, well, I could have did something, I could have asked questions, I could have, so that what if would have ate them up. So do
I
I
mean,
think it was the right thing to do? Absolutely.
we read the book, so there's a lot of stuff that we know with this, right? But I also think that them trying to find out who was going to give them closure, right? I think because Buddy Lee was the one that came to him and said, "Let's try to figure this out." I think
Yes,
they needed closure. I
absolutely.
know we need to figure out who did this to our children, even if even if that means that I won't be here anymore because I need
Exactly.
closure.
Then there was a point when in his mind, the reality is the person that did this, they going home to their people every night. Can you live with that? Can you live with the reality of that motherfucker be sitting right next to you that
Mm.
then murdered your son? So
And it also felt like because their sons were gay, there was not really, and people really were not trying to try to figure out who killed their kids.
it
I
was
mean,
just dismissing.
it's like they just came in and shot people. This was a brutal murder of their children. It was a personal type of thing. It wasn't just, it was somebody came and shot them and they died on the table. This was brutal. So to them, they feel like it was personal. So why would you personally do that to my children?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, this next question actually talks about Ike's mom, Maya. So it says Ike's wife, Maya, talks about the importance of being an ally. Do you think her experiences as a mother, a Black woman, and a nurse have informed her thinking? How do you think she was able to deal with Ike when he was unaccepting of their son? And have you ever had a family member to believe something that frustrated or upset you? And how did you deal with it? Well, we're not going to answer that second part of that question because it's not about us, right? But if we were to really address the fact that Maya was, in most cases, the women are the ones that have the voice that's going to bring the calmness
Yes.
to the situation, to bring the understanding, to bring some sense of compromise. And for me, what was definitely not mistakable, was that she loved Ike and she
Also,
loved Isaac. She waited for her man while he was in jail. And the reality was, when it was all said and done, she accepted them both in their feelings about the situation. She accepted that, you know, that's how he felt. That's how he felt. Mistreating her son, that wasn't accepted. But I don't believe not at one moment that they didn't have some pillow talk moments where she was like, "You need to get your shit together."
that was also evident how she talked to him after his death. Because Maya was Maya wasn't the person during this book I ever saw her bite her tongue for him. You know, the first night they had whatever happened and he didn't come home, she told him then, if you want somebody else, I waited for you while you was in prison. Now, if you want
Mm-hmm.
something else, let me know, but don't keep me on the string with this, right? And she also told him, oh, now you want to be bad now that our son is gone. You could have done better while he was here.
Mm. Coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yeah, so I don't see her ever at any point in time holding her tongue from him. She was straight up and straightforward and told him exactly what she thought. You
Absolutely.
know?
Absolutely. Um, the next part says, in this climatic scene, Buddy Lee and Ike note that their sons would have probably forgiven the people who killed, hurt, or betrayed them, but the fathers do not. Were you satisfied by their choices?
Oh,
Absolutely. Absolutely. My take on that is to know that, regardless how, to know that my child was that loving, that kind, and that forgiving, but you felt the need to take their life because you aren't.
well,
That's it.
forgiving them does not mean that you don't think they should get what they deserve, right? Forgiveness just means you giving forgiveness is for really for you, not the other person.
Exactly.
Right? So forgiveness is saying, okay, I can deal with what you did, but that does not mean that they should not pay for what they did. Those are two totally different things,
Two totally different things.
right?
Two
So
totally different things.
yeah, I was satisfied by how they went out in the blaze of glory.
So while we're talking about this, I want to talk about these particular quotes. Right, there's a quote that starts at the beginning of the book, and this is with reference to Ike actually in this scene, that moment where he's punching the punching bag and he's crying, and it really describes what took place. Right, and it says, tears ran from his eyes and stung his cheeks. Tears for his son, tears for his wife, tears for the little girl they had to raise, tears for who they were and what they had lost. Each drop felt like it was slicing his face open like a razor blade. Hence the title.
So that just means it was that had to be a very, very, very painful event for him during that time.
That painful cry.
I think he was hiding during that cry too, because he's outside by himself with that. So that was a very, very painful time for him. That relief, and I think some of that release with those tears was just pure guilt. I should have done better,
And now I don't have the opportunity to.
and I mean that part not just because his son was dead, he was gay. I mean even from his childhood. If I would have made better choices, I
I
would
would have been present.
I've been present. I
Yes.
think all of that combines into that sentence right there. You know, all of
Yes,
that.
that part. Because he ended up doing time in jail, which gave him a significant amount of time away from him. So he wasn't necessarily entirely involved in his upbringing.
Yeah.
So by the end of the book, we have a statement that says, and this is around the time that another tragic moment was coming, but again, there was resolve, right? There was answers. They had finally arrived at a point where they knew more. And again, he was rebuilding his life. And it says this time when he was crying, they didn't feel his tears, didn't feel so much like razor blades. They felt like the long awaited answer to a mournful prayer for rain.
Yep.
It's a different it's a different cry. You know what this reminds me of? Remember the book Perfect Peace?
Yeah.
Remember the dad that would
Oh,
cry in the sun?
they would go to the river and scream at him and Boomalicious. Yeah,
Yes.
they,
That in the moments when it rained,
yeah, they would go.
kind of it's like they could hide their mourn, their tears with the sound of the water in the rain. That kind of connects me with that. Uh, but those two powerful statements were perfect reminders of how we arrived at this point. The grief, the tears had representation of the hurt. But again, how tears can have different meanings. Because we can cry from the hurt, but sometimes we cry when there's joy, when there's resolve, when there's just a need for release.
Believe. Yep.
So those razor blade tears that he started out with had begun to give him the healing that he needed. Our last question was uh was based off of this statement, our last discussion question. It says, by the end of the book, a beautiful community has sprung around Ariana, which was their daughters,
Okay.
and then Ike and Buddy Lee's granddaughter. Ike has a last conversation with Isaiah where he tells him that he finally understands what his son had tried to tell him. And this was love is love.
Uh, mhm.
What are some key moments that led him to accept this truth? How did his journey throughout the novel prepare Ike to accept it? And where do you think Ike will go from here? There was a more profound moment in this conversation with Ike and with Isaiah, rather, with Ike talking to Isaiah, and he realizes he may have not been the best husband, he may have not been the best father, but now he has an opportunity to be the best
Right.
grandfather. And so when he tells him love is love, what he now accepts is the reality that he no longer has that opportunity for Isaiah to experience. However, being the best that he can be to his daughter, because he wasn't very accepting of Ariana either.
No, I think in the book it said that too. In the book, I believe at the end of that, he says, "I'm going to give Ariana everything that I didn't give to you."
Exactly.
You know, so like the whole journey of the book was just a self reflection of revelations, right?
Yes,
We meet a person in this book that's just not what most men would think would be, but how they accepted her is a whole 180 from what they did for their son.
exactly.
So you see their growth. Also, you see that growth with Buddy Lee when he was going to his half brother's house to get some stuff, some guns and stuff, and his
Mm.
brother called Derek a faggot.
Us.
But oh yeah, Buddy Lee grabbed him by the neck and said, "Oh, you won't do that anymore.
Hmm.
That's the
No more.
last time you called my son anything other than his damn name." So you see how throughout this book, though, because and so the brother also said, "Well, you did at one time." He says, "Yes, I did at one time, but not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not here anymore. And I refuse to allow you to disrespect him like that." So you see their whole revelation, and they come around to the fact that I also contributed to my son's sadness and not their demise, but their sadness and how they looked at themselves after
Right.
they died. Because I helped contribute to some of their sadness too, and I'm not going to allow anybody anymore to do anything against my child.
With every breath in his body, he meant that. And for me, that was the best part. Um, we had a discussion earlier where it's like about the book being about racism, but it was so more profound than that, because there were a lot of isms. There were a lot of isms that were present, but I think it comes down to this profound part where it says love is love. And when it comes to the love of a parent, it's the one thing that every child desires to
Deserve.
experience and have and deserves. They deserve to be loved by a parent, to be loved by someone that's present if in that parental role. And in this case, I don't feel when it came to Ike, when it came to Buddy Lee, that they didn't love their sons. They just did not allow them to feel it. They didn't express it well.
Up, and the men that they were, and society said that was wrong. So
Yes.
they didn't correlate that being wrong, but this is also my child. You know what I mean? So you got these men that are supposed to be these manly men. So I'm supposed to be this manly man. I beat up people in the street. I'm a drug dealer. I run guns. How does my child that I'm living with, that I gave birth to, that's part of me, not also be this strong? Because we have these figures about who men should be instead of just letting men be who they are.
And who they are. Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
and you can also see throughout this book, Ike and Derek, not Ike, but Isaiah and Derek constantly wanted their father's love because they always invited them to things that was happening.
Yes.
They always tried to contact them. Even throughout the book, they still strive for their father's love, and they were still hurt that they did not get it.
Exactly. There was so much to learn from this book. This book just gave you a lot. But again, I highly recommend it. This was a 5-star read for me. Um, and I thank you, Drea, for recommending it. I have began the another book called All Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby, and it too is a really great read. Um, there are some quotes that really stood out to me. I will do a written review, of course, but I have to say that I have truly enjoyed this read. I've had other suspense books and things like that I've read, but what I can appreciate about it, this read, number one, not only was it a Black author, which BSB supports, it is a traditionally published author, but it's a Black male, a Black man, and for that I say, woo, like
Great.
great job.
Now, during Indie Love, when I went to his book signing, he did tell us that this book was based off a cousin of his. The cousin has not passed away or anything. He was saying that the cousin kept bringing this gentleman around and kept saying that it was his friend. When he finally decided to release his truth to his father, it did not go very well. So this was a book about, okay, you're mad because your son is gay, but what if he's not here anymore? That's he got the idea from. That's where he got the idea from. Because at the
Hmm.
end of it all, it really didn't matter if he was gay. He was still my child, and I still.
Hmm. There was a book, it was a saying, some type of story that came out, and this is what it reminded me of, where it says, I'm dying of cancer, right? This is what the guy goes to his parents and tells them, and they're all distraught.
Hmm.
And so when everybody's in there, they're like the hooping, the hollering, it's like, I don't have long to live. And so then he decides to reveal to him, well, the truth is, I'm a survive this. I'm gonna live longer. But there's another truth. I don't have cancer, but I'm gay.
But I'm gay.
So the reality is, would you rather I have cancer and know that I'm dying, or is it easier for you just to accept that I'm gonna live, but I'm gonna be gay?
Gay. Yep.
So yeah,
There's a
that's
quote in this book too that I love. It says, "It didn't seem fair for a man to mourn someone so abundantly that he had loved so miserably." So how do you mourn him with so much vigor, right? But when he was alive, you didn't love him enough.
mm, Mm,
How, so how do you reconcile that?
how do you reconcile that? We have left you guys with a lot to think about. If you're considering reading this, it's available in on all platforms. Um, it is definitely on Amazon, available in digital format and ebook. It's available in audio. As I mentioned to you, Alex Lazar White is the narrator for that book, and he does an amazing job. And it's also available in paper copy. So I don't know if Mr. Cosby has or provides, if he has a website where he provides autographed copies, but I always encourage readers to, if you're going to buy paperbacks, buy them directly from the author if you can. It's worth it to have if you can have an autographed copy as well. So, Drea, again, I'd like to thank you for joining me. I so appreciate you. I love our chats. And guys, I thank you for listening to us in our spiel on this great book. We probably will still be talking about it for days to come.
Tomorrow.
But thank you. And y'all have a good night.
Thank you, Miss Yaya.
My pleasure.